Imagine waking up one day and realizing the people around you shaped your beliefs. And suddenly, the life you call you feels borrowed. Because there's a shadow you've been pretending isn't there, and it's been steering more than you think. By the end, you'll understand what it is, how it hides, and how to face it without becoming someone you don't recognize. You don't wake up and choose your patterns. Most of them wake up and choose you. You tell yourself you're fine. You're just tired, just busy, just not in the mood. But then you overreact to a small comment. You avoid a message for days. You sabotage momentum right when your life starts improving. Here's what most people miss. The problem usually isn't the moment. It's what the moment touches. This video is about the shadow you pretend isn't there. The parts of you you learn to hide to stay safe, loved, respected, or needed. And that's when you notice the shadow doesn't feel like evil. It feels like protection. We'll break down how it forms, how it disguises itself in everyday life, and why it shows up most when you're about to grow. You'll see it in 4 places: your triggers, the moments that feel too much; your defenses, the habits you use to avoid feeling; your identity, the role you keep performing; and your relationships, where you keep repeating the same pain. Now watch what happens next. Once you can name the shadow, it loses its favorite weapon: confusion. Definition. Frame. Simple. Your shadow is any feeling, need, memory, or trait you pushed out of sight because it once seemed unsafe to have. Not unsafe in a dramatic way, unsafe in a subtle way. Like, if I'm honest, I'll be rejected. If I need help, I'll be judged. If I fail, I'll be nothing. Think of it like a doorway you nailed shut years ago. You didn't do it because you were weak. You did it because you were surviving. But here's the twist. The doorway doesn't disappear. It leaks. And the leak shows up as patterns you can't explain. Open loop. In the next sections, you'll learn the clearest signs your shadow is active and the exact moments it takes the wheel. The shadow doesn't announce itself. It blends in. Principle 1. The shadow shows up as overreaction. A friend forgets to reply. A coworker changes their tone. A partner seems distant. You tell yourself it shouldn't matter. But your body says otherwise. This is the turning point. When the present triggers an old prediction, not "this is happening," but "this means I'm not safe." Mini scenario. You see "seen" on a message. Your chest tightens. Your mind races. You decide they don't care, so you pull back first. Here's what most people miss. Your reaction is rarely about what they did. It's about what your shadow expects. Principle 2. The shadow shows up as control. Control can look like perfection, planning, overthinking, being the responsible one. But then, you notice how exhausting it is. Mini scenario. You rehearse what to say before every serious conversation. You rewrite messages to sound right. You check for approval in their face while you're talking. Now watch what happens next. Control isn't confidence. It's fear in a suit. The shadow whispers, if you control the outcome, you won't feel the old pain. So you manage impressions. You manage emotions. You manage people. And that's when you notice. The more you control, the more fragile you feel. Microhook. Here's the twist. Control is often just a way to avoid vulnerability. The shadow also hides in productivity. You stay busy because stillness would force you to feel. You chase improvements because enough feels dangerous. But then, when you finally slow down, anxiety rises like a tide. This is the turning point. The shadow hates silence because silence makes you honest. So ask yourself, where do you overreact and where do you overmanage? Because those are 2 of the cleanest fingerprints of what you've been denying. The shadow doesn't just affect feelings, it shapes identity. Principle 3, the shadow turns into a role you can't stop playing. The peacemaker, the achiever, the funny one, the strong one, the low-maintenance one. Here's what most people miss. Roles feel stable, but they can become cages. Mini scenario. You're the person everyone vents to. You give advice, you solve, you carry. Then you go quiet when you need something. Now watch what happens next. The shadow often contains the needs you decided were too much. If you learned that needing support creates disappointment, your shadow holds your neediness. So you become independent. But then, your independence becomes loneliness with better branding. Principle 4. The shadow shows up as projection. Projection is when you can't tolerate something in yourself, so you see it everywhere else. Mini scenario. Someone is confident, and you call them arrogant. Someone sets a boundary, and you call them cold. Someone rests, and you call them lazy. Here's the twist. The intensity of your judgment is a clue, not always, but often, and that's when you notice. The shadow favors extremes. You're either above it or destroyed by it. You're either fine or too much. You're either in control or out of control. Microhook. Here's what most people miss. Healing isn't becoming perfect. It's becoming real. The shadow also reorganizes your memory. You remember the times you were embarrassed, rejected, corrected, so you build a personality designed to avoid repetition. But then, you forget you're allowed to evolve. This is the turning point. The shadow tries to keep you version locked. So when you feel yourself performing, pause, ask, what am I trying to prevent? Because the role you cling to is usually guarding a fear you won't name. The shadow is clever. It turns pain into habits. Principle 5. The shadow disguises itself as logic. It says, I'm not avoiding, I'm being realistic. But then, realism becomes a wall you hide behind. Mini scenario. You don't apply because they won't pick me. You don't confess feelings because it'll ruin the friendship. You don't start because I'm not ready. Now watch what happens next. Your shadow can predict your failure with perfect confidence because it's the one causing the hesitation. This is the turning point. Avoidance always feels like relief first, and relief becomes addictive. Principle 6. The shadow creates sabotage right before growth. You're doing well, then you pick a fight. You're improving, then you binge distractions. You're close to a breakthrough, then you suddenly don't care. Here's what most people miss. Growth threatens the old identity. If your identity was built on surviving pain, peace can feel unfamiliar, almost suspicious. Mini scenario. Someone treats you consistently. You feel calm and then uncomfortable. Your mind scans for what must be wrong. Here's the twist. Your nervous system can mistake stability for danger if chaos was your normal. Microhook. Now watch what happens next. The shadow doesn't chase happiness. It chases familiarity. It can even hijack your relationships. You test people instead of trusting them. You withdraw instead of communicating. You act unbothered instead of being honest. But then, you end up proving your own fear. That closeness doesn't last. This is the turning point. The shadow isn't your enemy. It's an old strategy that outlived its purpose, and strategies can be updated once you see them. So why does the pattern stay? Because the shadow is not only hidden, it's rewarded. Here's what most people miss. Many shadows are socially supported. Being easygoing gets you praise. Being the strong one gets you respect. Being productive gets you applause. But then, nobody sees the cost. Why it stays, the real mechanics. It avoids short-term pain. Facing the truth hurts at first. Avoiding it feels clean. It protects belonging. You fear that being fully seen will make you less lovable. It preserves identity. Even a painful identity can feel safer than the unknown. Now watch what happens next. The shadow disguises itself as your personality. It's just how I am. I'm just not emotional. I'm just brutally honest. And that's when you notice. The shadow loves just. Mini scenario. You keep your thoughts polite, careful, edited. You call it maturity. But you're really afraid of conflict or afraid of being dismissed. Here's the twist. The shadow doesn't always look dark. Sometimes it looks nice. People-pleasing can be a shadow. Over-agreeing can be a shadow. Being the constant helper can be a shadow. Microhook. This is the turning point. The shadow's favorite hiding place is virtue. It also disguises itself through distraction, endless scrolling, constant noise, non-stop stimulation. But then, the moment you're alone, the shadow gets louder. So integration starts with a new question. Not, how do I get rid of this? But, what is this trying to protect me from feeling? Because when the shadow is met with clarity instead of shame, it stops needing to hide. And that's when you notice what you deny becomes behavior. What you face becomes choice. Let's bring it home. Your shadow is the part of you that learned, don't need too much. Don't feel too deeply. Don't trust too easily. Don't shine too brightly. And then you built a life that obeys those rules. Here's what most people miss. The shadow doesn't disappear when you ignore it. It just speaks through your habits. Now watch what happens next. Once you stop fighting it, you can finally lead it. Do this today. Checklist. Name one trigger you've been calling overreaction and write what it really fears losing. Notice your go-to defense, control, avoidance, humor, numbness, and label it in the moment. This is protection. Tell the truth by 10% in one safe conversation. One honest sentence, no performance. Choose one boundary you've delayed and set it calmly, without explaining yourself into exhaustion. Replace one sabotage habit with a 2-minute pause. Breathe, feel the body, then decide instead of reacting. This is the turning point. The goal isn't to become fearless, it's to become aware. Ethical note. If your shadow is tied to trauma, abuse, or intense anxiety, you don't have to process it alone. Support from a trusted professional can make this safer and faster. There's no shame in getting help. There's wisdom in it. And here's the twist. Facing the shadow doesn't make you darker. It makes you more whole. If this helped you, subscribe for more calm, cinematic psychology that respects your humanity, and share this with someone who keeps saying, I'm fine, while their life says otherwise. Comment question. What's one I'm fine habit you've realized is actually your shadow asking for attention?